Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari
Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari
Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharia Stotra Shata Shri Srimati Sivangrese Sivaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnu Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharia Ashtotra Shata Shri Srimati Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Guru Parampara Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Jai Nita Guru Premanandi Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Jai Guru. So, then warmly welcome to this beautiful Srimad Bhagavatam Katha on the 30th of December 2022. But before we start reading from the transcendental from the Srimad Bhagavatam, we continue to hear from the Transcendental Diary, Travels with His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, October 1976 to November 1976. Srila Prabhupada is here still in Sri Vrindavan, and it is November 26th. There was an unexpected arrival today. Bali Madan Prabhu, who turned up after traveling from New York via Japan and Calcutta. Hattet ihr das gestern schon?
Nochmal. Wir haben die Bhagavatam-Klasse gestern beendet. Also das müsste jetzt was Neues anfangen.
Okay. After settling into a room in the guest house, he came to see Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was happy to see him and they chatted for some time. Bali, who came back into full-time service during Prabhupada's summer tour in America, reported that he currently has no program and would like some service. Tamal Krishna Maharaj had given him the charge of the guest house in our New York center, but it is not well established yet, and Bali felt that there was no sufficient engagement for him. Thus he decided to come here to see Srila Prabhupada. His arrival seems opportune. Bali Madan was the first devotee to go to Australia. In 1969 he went alone to Sydney and began the preaching there single-handedly. With this in mind, Prabhupada called in Chittahari, Ugrashrava and me to discuss the situation there. Bali Madan was interested, but he also asked about Bombay. Prabhupada had previously offered him and his wife the service of managing the new Twin Tower guest house there when it is completed, and he now indicated that this is still an option. After some discussion, Prabhupada left it to Bali to decide which service he prefers. Despite the present difficulties, the preaching in Australia seems to be going on. Balaram Das, the temple president of Melbourne, has sent a letter recommending 2 men and a woman for first initiation and 1 man for second. Because there is no current GBC, Prabhupada chanted on their beads himself, and these were sent out by mail. Today is exactly a year since I joined Prabhupada's party, and today I made my greatest blunder. In the morning, as usual, Prabhupada went upstairs right after his breakfast to take his nap in the sunshine. I escorted him through his rooftop room onto the back portion of the roof and left him lying comfortably on a mattress. On previous visits to Vrindavan, I have always remained on the roof with him, ready to serve whenever he awoke. This summer, however, the devotees fitted a new bell system for Prabhupada to summon his servants even when he is on the roof. By pressing a button attached to his desk inside the upper room, Prabhupada can sound the bell both upstairs and downstairs. So thinking there was little point to staying upstairs where Prabhupada was sleeping, I decided to go back down. If Prabhupada needed me, he could simply ring the bell. I would hear it and respond immediately. Off I went, back through the room, down the stairs, and eventually out onto the front entrance veranda, where I ended up chit-chatting with Ugrashrava and Chittahari. After some time, I started to think that Prabhupada seemed to be resting a little longer than usual. I was waiting for his call, but the bell had not rung. Looking at my watch, I was starting to think that maybe I should go up and see what was happening. But I was so engrossed in my prajalpa that I ignored my inner prompt and kept on talking. Just as I was starting to feel some unease, Maharati Das, a visiting devotee from Germany, who is staying in the guest house, suddenly ran from around the corner of the guest house stairs, angst written all over his face. Hari Sauri, Hashauri, Prabhupada is trapped on the roof. I went into instant shock, and I knew immediately what had happened. I raced through the house and up the back stairs, full of anxiety and trepidation. As I re-entered the room from the front door, I saw Srila Prabhupada standing, glowering through the fly screen on the back door, waiting for me to open it. It was sickeningly clear what I had done. Part of my early training with Srila Prabhupada was to always shut doors and turn off lights and fans when leaving a room. Thus, when I left him to sleep on the back section of the roof, I had returned through the room, shut the screen door behind me, and in a stupor of automation, slit the bolt, locking it from inside. Prabhupada had not rung the bell on his desk because he couldn't. There was no time to offer obeisances. I quickly slit the bolt back to free him from his imprisonment. As I did so, Prabhupada, glaring at me through the screen, shook his head and said simply, "You rascal, I have been waiting here for almost an hour." I opened the door and he strode past without another word. I was mortified. Prabhupada's anger was beyond words. There was no need for him to say anything because the offense was so obvious and foolish. He had woken up, and when he couldn't get into the room, he had to wait on the roof for nearly an hour before Maharati happened to look over from his guest house room. Signaling his attention, Prabhupada shouted to him, "Find Harishauri, he has kept me prisoner here." Downstairs, Prabhupada sat behind his desk. He was calm but serious. He was quite disgusted and told me, "Your brain is dull from too much voracious eating and sleeping." I felt terrible. There was nothing to say in excuse. I simply apologized. Prabhupada nodded, said no more about it, and because it was already 11:30, we paired to the back garden for his massage. So far as he was concerned, it was over. He changed into his gamcha and sat on a straw mat in the sunshine, relaxed and at peace with his eyes closed, basking in the gentle winter sunshine. He allowed me to rub and net his head and body with sandalwood and mustard oils. Even as I did this, I felt burdened, as if a heavy cloud were hanging over me and somehow less connected. At the end of Prabhupada's lunch, I was still feeling the weight of my offense, despite my apology and his letting the matter rest. I resolved in my mind what to do. I followed him back up onto the roof, where he sat for a while in the rocking chair, relaxing after his meal, hand and bead bag, chanting the holy names. I offered myself before him and stretched out flat on the ground in full-length obeisances. Rising, I again apologized, this time as sincerely, penitently and honestly as I could, and promised that such a thing would never happen again. Prabhupada smiled, and with that smile the oppressive shroud upon my heart instantly lifted. He had accepted my genuine regret, and I felt immediately relieved of my offense. My mind became clear again, and the invisible barrier formed by my misdeed dissipated. "All right," he said kindly, "but you should be careful in the future to be attentive, otherwise it will cause inconvenience to me." So did something spring to your kind attention that you would like to share?
It's a very funny occurrence to happen to a spiritual master when the devotees are not very attentive and locking him outside. It brought this tension to see like how a spiritual master would react to this kind of situation, which is very funny but also very scary, probably for the students. Because when a spiritual master gets angry with his students, then they feel it. The devotee was describing like how he was feeling this regret, this cloud, and this anger from the spiritual master, and how he could appease him in order to make it go away. So it really explains like how this connection with the spiritual master is working within a devotee. This kind of sense.
Raphael Prabhu just said, I'm just summarizing for the online listeners, that there's some funny incident that happened, that the disciple locked the guru out from going out. And that this also shows very much the connection between the disciple and the spiritual master. No? Yeah, actually, Srila Prabhupada was not very pleased about that. No? And he said immediately, you're too much dal because of overeating and oversleeping. Too much tamagun. In other words, no? Inattentiveness. So that's also very interesting, because Srila Prabhupada wants us to come to the mode of goodness, to the platform of goodness and transcendental goodness even. So that we can see things as they are. To an onlooker, it may look like something like small happened or something, but the guru has the obligation to correct the mentality of the disciple, and especially carelessness and tamagun, basically, avidya. So then, therefore, Srila Prabhupada manifested his anger first. He was like, he didn't say much, but this Harishwara Prabhu, he could feel the weight of his offense. And it was like, okay, Srila Prabhupada wasted just 1 hour of his valuable time because of this mistake. And he could have translated some books or done something more productively with his time. But then, another point here also is that even though Harishwara Prabhu immediately apologized, still he did not feel the cloud over his head, on his heart, disappear. Only after again he made a special endeavor to really go to Srila Prabhupada and regretful, offer his obeisances and again ask for pardon. Then it changed. So this is also something very interesting for us to know, that only by regretting something we can really resolve the offense. If we just say, I'm sorry, and we don't, do something particular about it, it did not sink in our conscience, so to say, then it is not really clearing the offense. In Deutschland sagen wir Lippenbekenntnis. It's just a Lippenbekenntnis. It's just, some word, but without any weight. And so the weight was still on his head and heart, and rascal, what did I do? And then Srila Prabhupada, he was becoming very cheerful when he saw this regret of his disciple, and then he was smiling, and that was lifting the mood of the devotee. So it's a very intimate connection, like you said. And when we sing the Gurvashtaka prayers in the morning, Samsara Vandavalilaluka, and the last line, last stanza, it is actually said that Yasya prasadat bhagavat prasadu yasya prasadan nagati ktubi. So by pleasing the spiritual master, one can attain basically everything, and by not pleasing him, one has no goal. Nagati kutopi, one is lost, basically. And sometimes we feel this being lost. inside. Maybe some of us already had this experience, that we knew, oh, we did not please our spiritual master. Once I had that. I had a little depressive state of mind, and I was too much in my head, too much in my false ego. In a Sunday festival, I was sitting there, and my Guru Maharaj was still there, and he entered, and I offered obeisances, but he offered obeisances at the same time, of course. The disciple is supposed to offer his obeisances. And then I was thinking, that he's displeased with me because he did not see that I offered him my obeisances, and he behaved differently. I don't know what was the reason, but for me it really felt like, maybe he thought I did not offer obeisances or something, and then it's like stern and strong, it's like heavy, Guru also means heavy. Sadhu means also sharp, like a sword, for example, but Guru can also mean heavy. So I felt that heaviness, and it was not something very nice to experience, and I was also thinking, okay, how can I change that again? And, feeling this remorse inside of me, and it was quite heavily weighing down on me, on my already weakened mind. So that's not such a beautiful experience if you have that. I don't know, did somebody of you already have that experience? Mataji, you had already this experience that in one time of your devotional life you did feel like you did not please your Guru? He felt displeased with you? You had that experience ever? It's heavy, it's really heavy. You don't want to live anymore. It's just so heavy.
In terms of my experience.
Oh yeah?
When I was still in my early days, when I visited the temple for the first or second time, there was Bhakti Bhushana Swami sitting like in the crowd, and I didn't realize that I have taken his seat, Like he was sitting there, then he stood up, went somewhere away, and I was very immediately like, well, I'm going to sit there. And then he came back and was looking at me. I was like, oh, I didn't realize that I have taken a seat. And then I was like, please, can I give you the seat? And in my way of how I was talking to him, it was very very respectful, because I didn't know. He was like a Maharaj, he was like someone ascended. And he was like, no, it's fine, please stay there, I go sit somewhere else. And then I realized, ooh, I think I probably have angered him in some kind of way. And this kind of this thought took for a long time, and I was really like thinking about, have I offended him in some kind of way?
Yeah.
And at some point it was clear, because I had a darshan with him, and he was like, I realized it was not an offense, it was just, I didn't know.
No, he didn't take offense, but we could feel the displeasure of Krishna.
Yeah.
So that's like heavy, really heavy. It doesn't give any relaxation, any peace of mind. You just feel very morose and very downtrodden, isn't it? Like, oh no, what did I do? And Krishna, sitting in the heart of each living entity, he tells us, he gives us the inspiration to say this, So then we just need to regret, and apologize. Like when we make offense to another Vaishnava, willingly or unwillingly, sometimes maybe we insult another Vaishnava or something. So we can learn from this incident here, from Harishari Prabhu and from our own experience, that we really need to feel this regret and apologize very humbly to that person and please the person and everything. And then Krishna will forgive you, Otherwise, the offense will stand there in the room, and it's really important to clear Vaishnava Aparad. Very, very much important. Otherwise, it's called the mad elephant offense, and that can stop one's spiritual life. It's not completely destroying it, but like when you have a mad elephant in your garden, you don't want a mad elephant in your garden, because whatever you planted will be uprooted and smashed down underneath the feet and whatever, An elephant can even uproot a tree, They're so powerful. So, and that can happen to our spiritual life too, if we are negligent and we don't care. And that again suits very well to this today's verse about the false ego in Srimad Bhagavatam. Another thing that I noticed here in this section is that this Bali Madana Prabhu, who came to visit Srila Prabhupada, he was, you could say, he started the preaching in Australia, single-handedly, it was mentioned. And then 2 paragraphs later or something, it is being said that Australia, the yatra of Australia, was then struggling very much because of the absence of a GBC. There was no governing body commissioner, no administrator, so to say, who was leading on behalf of Srila Prabhupada that yatra. But still Srila Prabhupada was, leaving the option to either go back to Australia and serve there, or to go to Bombay and manage that guest house to Balimaran Prabhu and his wife. It's very interesting, isn't it? So still there's some individuality and some, okay, what would you prefer, Okay, then let's go to Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naran Shavanaruttamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayit Ramatam Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Vedyantasto Vyabhadrani Vidunoti Saritsatam Nashta Payeshva Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashtoki Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiti. Okay, we don't have the verse at the board, but it's in prose, so I will just read. We are now in Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavata Purana, Canto 5, The Creative Impetus, Chapter 14, The Material World is the Great Forest of Enjoyment. Text 40. Yat apidik ibhad jainu yajvinu yevai varashaya Kingtu parang mrithe shairan asyang eva mame yang iti krita varanubandaya yang visrijya swayam upasangrita. Okay, word by word translation. Yadapi, although dik ibha jayana, who are victorious in all directions. Yajvina, expert in performing great sacrifices. Ye, all of whom, by, indeed, Vajarishaya, very great saintly kings. Kim tu, but, param, only this earth, mridhe, and better, chayiran, lying down, asyam, on this, earth, eva, indeed, mama, mine, iyam, this, iti, considering in that way, krita, on which is created, vaira anubandhayam, a relationship of enmity with others. A relationship of enmity with others. Visrijya, giving up. Swayam, his own life. Upasangrita, being killed. Being killed. Text 40. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Sharanaravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. There were many great saintly kings who were very expert in performing sacrificial rituals and very competent in conquering other kingdoms. Yet despite their power, they could not attain the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is because those great kings could not even conquer the false consciousness of I am this body and this is my property. Thus, they simply created enmity with rival kings, fought with them and died without having discharged life's real mission. Purport. The real mission of life for the conditioned soul is to re-establish the forgotten relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engage in devotional service so that he may revive Krishna consciousness after giving up the body. One does not have to give up his occupation as a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra or whatever. In any position, while discharging his prescribed duty, one can develop Krishna consciousness simply by associating with devotees who are representatives of Krishna and who can teach the science. Regretfully, the big politicians and leaders in the material world simply create enmity and are not interested in spiritual advancement. Material advancement may be very pleasing to an ordinary man, but ultimately he is defeated because he identifies himself with the material body and considers everything related to it to be his property. This is ignorance. Actually, nothing belongs to him, not even the body. By one's karma, one gets a particular body, and if he does not utilize his body to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all his activities are frustrated. The real purpose of life is stated in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.13. Atapumbeya dvija shveshta vanashrama vibhagashaha sanuttistasya dhamasya sangsiriya haritushanam. It really does not matter what activity a man engages in. If he can simply satisfy the Supreme Lord, his life is successful. Again, the translation. There were many great saintly kings who were very expert in performing sacrificial rituals and were very competent in conquering other kingdoms. Yet, despite their power, they could not attain the loving service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is because those great kings could not even conquer the false consciousness of I am this body and this is my property. Thus they simply created enmity with rival kings, fought with them and died without having discharged life's real mission. So, here we are in the 14th chapter of the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And just before this verse, we already heard how important it is. First of all, how many material miseries are there, and they were being described in detail, in great detail, by different comparisons of this analogy of the material world as the great forest of enjoyment. And then, in the verse prior to the text 40, there were mentioned the importance of association with saintly persons and their characteristics. And the last sentence of this verse was, being unfortunate and attached to the miserable material conditions, a materialistic person cannot associate with them, with the saints, with the sadhus. Being attached to miserable conditions and being unfortunate. So, and now here in today's text, text 40, we can hear that having a high material position, let's say as a mighty emperor or king, and even great saintly kings who were expert in performing sacrificial rituals and so on, is not exactly the criteria for attaining the perfection of life. And many years ago also I heard that when one can conquer one's own mind, of course the false ego is also a function of the mind, so when one can conquer one's own mind, then basically one is undefeatable. And Lord Shri Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita that a soul who has conquered his mind, who can control his mind, his senses, is equipoised and has all his beautiful characteristics mentioned there, he has already attained the super soul, and for him liberation is very easy. But it's not so easy to control the mind and to always, control the senses and everything, especially since we conditioned living entities, we jivas, we have been conditioned since many thousands and maybe millions of births already in different forms of life, and we are accustomed to sense gratification, following our instincts, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. So naturally, when we finally come back, we get this auspicious window of the human form of life. Then what do? We continue with the same activities, right? First of all, naturally, because this is the nature of the body. Physical body, that's the nature of our imprisonment. And I had a nice analogy of this rarity, of this seldomhood of this material form of life and the great fortune that it offers. And the analogy goes as follows. There's a turtle swimming in the great ocean, big turtle, and swimming in the huge, gigantic ocean. And where sometimes there's some plank, like some bread or something, is floating on the surface of the ocean. And in that plank there's a hole from a branch, your branch hole, inside. Like when we see trees, they have the branches, and so when we cut that piece of wood, then this part can fall out very easily, and there's a hole, And so this plank with the hole inside just happens to pass by when this turtle swimming in the ocean, in the vast gigantic ocean, sticks out his head, and the head goes through this hole, so to say, So this is the real rarity of the great good fortune that we have when we actually attain, only when we attain the human form of life. What to speak of coming in contact with a pure devotee like Srila Prabhupada and attaining the merciful glance of Sri Sri Gauranitai, which blesses us with so much good fortune. That's even more incredible. So that's a great fortunate position. And why it is so fortunate? Because here we can see how materialistic advancement and material positions and everything, they're actually not life's real purpose. And people suffer when they don't have any purpose in life. And if you ask the people, okay, but what is your goal in life? And some people, they say, I want to have a great house and a happy family, or I want to make a big career or something, I want to be famous, or, I want to be the best person in whatever, category. But that is all due to ignorance, because by this activity is also what we attain, even if the person is lucky enough to make it there, to get its goal, to achieve its goal, then the happiness is there, but only temporarily. And there's unhappiness too. It's like two sides of the coin. And the other day I was reading that another, the great wealth in this world is coming from Lakshmiji, the goddess of fortune, is her energy, wealth. And another name of the goddess of fortune is Chanchala, which means she's flickering. She is not staying with anyone else except Lord Vishnu. And Srila Prabhupada, he gave the example of of Ravana, for example. Do you already know the story of Lord Ramachandra and how he killed Ravana? Not yet. Ah, nice. Could tell a story. But that's a beautiful epic. It's called Ramayana. And another big one epic is the Mahabharata, so the Indian great epics. And this is such an amazing story. But Ravana basically kidnapped Lord Ramachandra's wife, Sita Devi, the goddess of fortune. And because of that, his whole dynasty basically was destroyed. His country was destroyed, he was killed, you know. So that is also what happens to us, conditioned souls, if we try to enjoy the opulences of the goddess of fortune, wealth and whatever, fame, beauty, everything. All the opulences independently of the Lord. And do you want to know the secret why this is happening? Why this is the case? Why the goddess of fortune is only steady in association of Lord Vishnu? Because it is not our situation to be the enjoyers, actually. We were not created to be the masters. We were created by God to enjoy with him the same opulence like a king. And when a king has servants, the servants eat the king's food and they live in the same palace, you know, and they kind of enjoy the same things, you know. But they enjoy the things as secondary enjoyers. And so Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, God, he wants us to be really happy. He wants us to enjoy. But if we have the wrong conclusion that, yes, I am the crown of creation, everything I can observe is meant for my enjoyment, for my control, like I'm the crown of creation, you know, then this is actually a misidentification, you know, misunderstanding that only because we inherit something, it does not mean that we are entitled to enjoy it. It means we need to administrate it properly. And that's also the purpose of the great kings, great saintly kings, especially of the Vedic times. They were servants of their societies, servants of their countries, of their people. And at that time it was also then when, let's say for example, a child died before his parents in the Vedic times. Then anyone at this time could go and approach the king directly and tell, you know, what is not correct. Then there's a story in Krishna book about this incident that happened, that there was Arjuna and there was one man whose son had died before him. And so this man, he came to the kingly court and he said that you must be doing something wrong because this is not natural. This is an inadequacy. It's like a mistake happening. So then Arjuna had to go and find out, you know, why this is happening, you know. Maybe I mixed up the stories. Maybe I should better shut down. Do you know the story?
Yeah, I understand the story.
Yeah? Can you repeat it? I feel a little insecurity right now. It should be appropriate.
No, my English.
Oh, no problem. Don't worry about English.
Brahmana had a wife and his children died. Yes, that's
Yes.
the story.
Yes, yes.
5, 6, 7 children died.
Oh, really? 7 children.
And when Arjuna said, I defend your children and defend your and your wife, and I will be looking for Yamaraj, or I don't know who want to kidnap this child. And child was born, and Arjuna don't promised that he goes to the fire when he didn't see, didn't know.
He didn't make a solution to the problem.
Yes. And Arjuna prepared to go to the fire, but Lord Krishna says that you can't do this. He put Arjuna to the, I don't know how it's in English.
Chariot. Yeah.
Parsarabha.
Chariot.
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 And they go to Yamaraj and ask him
To return the kids.
to return the kids, and Yamaraj said that it's okay with it. I only wanted to see you, I wanted to serve you, and
Was it really Yamaraj or was it Mahavishnu? I remember there's one story also where Mahavishnu was playing some trick because he wanted to have the darshan of Lord Krishna. Maybe. So that's, very nice story actually. We can read again maybe sometime. It's in the Krishna book, But anyway, the point here being that it was not okay that the children would die before the parents. And so then he had to be responsible for that. So the kings, they used to serve their citizens, and especially the brahmanas, the sages, because they understand that they are above us, they are the head. The kshatriyas, they're just the arms, they're just protecting the people. But the brahmanas, they are protecting the knowledge, Vedas. So everyone has a different role in society, but the main component of this role is actually to be a servant. And here in this purport today, we hear also Srila Prabhupada saying that this is the perfection of the human form of life, how we utilize this body best is by pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead by our activities that we're doing. And those activities, like in the beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada is explaining about Varnashrama Dharma. That is a constitutional division of society. And he's quoting one verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, and I also extracted this verse so we can read it and go a little more along these lines. 1, 2, 13. Atapum vidvija shreshta vanashrama vibhagasha svanushtit hasya dhamasya sangsidhya haritoshanam. O best among the twice born, it is therefore concluded that the highest perfection one can achieve by discharging the duties prescribed for one's own occupation, according to case divisions and orders of life, is to please the personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Human society all over the world is divided into 4 castes and 4 orders of life. The 4 castes are the intelligent caste, the martial caste, the productive caste, and the laborer caste. These castes are classified in terms of one's work and qualification, and not by birth, guna karma, one's work and qualification. Then again, there are 4 orders of life, namely student life, householder's life, retired life, and devotional life. In the best interest of human society, there must be such divisions of life. Otherwise, no social institution can grow in a healthy state. And in each and every one of the above-mentioned divisions of life, the aim must be to please the supreme authority of the personality of Godhead. This institutional function of human society is known as the system of one ashram dharma, which is quite natural for the civilized life. The one ashram institution is constructed to enable one to realize the absolute truth. It is not for artificial domination of one division over another. When the aim of life, that is, realization of the absolute truth, is missed by too much attachment for indriya priti or sense gratification, as already discussed here before, the institution of one ashram is utilized by selfish men to pose an artificial predominance over the weaker section. In Kali Yuga or in the age of Paul, this artificial predominance is already current. But the saner section of the people know it well, that the divisions of castes and orders of life are meant for smooth social intercourse and high thinking, self-realization, and not for any other purpose. Herein the statement of the Bhagavatam is that the highest aim of life or the highest perfection of the institution of an ashram dharma is to cooperate jointly for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 4.13. So why did I read to you this text? Because here it's explaining that the one ashram social construct, the institution according the social institution of 8 categories for social activities, different castes, and for spiritual orders are meant for, like Srila Prabhupada says here, in the best interest of human society there must be such divisions of life, otherwise no social institution can grow in a healthy state. So that the state is growing in a healthy state, the individuals are also developing themselves, realizing the absolute truth, and and actually attaining the supreme goal of life, the satisfaction of God. So now it does not matter in which ashrama or in which spiritual order or in which caste one currently is, but all the different castes, social orders and spiritual stages, they are all successive, and they're successive for a gradual upliftment of consciousness. Once I heard that if one performs his prescribed duties, occupational duties, perfectly for 100 births, one attains the post of Brahma. So 100 births only we need to do as we are supposed to do, follow our duties and everything, and then we can again become the creator. We can attain the post of creating this material cosmic universe. So all the orders and ashramas, they are there also for elevating our consciousness. But how can we do that? They are very much regulating one's life. There's so many different duties, so many different fields of activities, but everything is meant to work cooperatively together for the pleasure of God. And we can understand that nowadays, like Srila Prabhupada here said before, in Kali Yuga, the people, they are very much actually quarreling, and trying to artificially lord it over one another, predominate. And we can see that. The leaders of the states, they are fighting, they are conducting some wars, like now in Russia and Ukraine, But why? Because there are selfish interests involved. When people consider this is my property, then they are naturally quarreling, because all of us, we are the sons of God, and we are inheriting the Lord's inheritance. And there's enough for everyone if we simply share. I think this is in the Nectar of Instruction. In the beginning verses, there's also described that Srila Prabhupada is giving a purport that a bird, for example, if you leave a bag full of grains standing somewhere in the countryside, an open bag with grains, some birds will come and they will pick some grains, and maybe some deer will come or something, you know, and eat their share. And then they will go and leave the rest there. But the human being comes along and grabs the whole bag, takes it with him. Doesn't care if somebody else would, you know, like to take something. So this is the problematic mentality that we need to correct in the human form of life. That actually nothing belongs to me. Not even the body, like Srila Prabhupada said. Not even this body. But why do we then act on the basis of the body when we try to act for sense gratification? We try to please the body, make it comfortable. For example, in winter when it's cold, we take much endeavor to get warm dresses, warm shoes and gloves and a hat and a shawl or whatever, you know. Or we take hot tea, you know, in order to prevent some cold or something, some cough, right? We take a great deal of activities in order to defend the body from becoming sick, right? And from undergoing some suffering. But this is because of the false ego. And now would you like to hear something about the false ego? What is this misidentification with myself being the body? Because actually I am consciousness, I am the soul who's living inside of the body. Would you like to hear something of the false ego, or do you already have some questions or comments to what I mentioned so far? Okay, alles akzeptiert. Accept everything. You're ready to surrender. Very good. Good association for me. Thank you. So there's a very nice page called Vanipedia.org. If you want to Google it, Vanipedia.org instead of Wikipedia. Vani means instructions. So and this is all from Srila Prabhupada's instructions. It's a very nice devotee couple in Belgium, in Gauradesh, who built this, you know, Vanipedia.org, with the help of so many volunteer devotees who are coming there translating Srila Prabhupada's instructions, Vani, in all different languages, you know. So this is a great resource, this site. And I was, you know, surfing a little bit this category of false ego. And so first of all, to understand what is false ego, I was looking at the category, this is called false ego. And there are certain verses, now without the verse numbers, but if you click on them, if you open them, you will have the Shastric reference. I would just like to read some of them to you, so that we can have a more deeper understanding what is that misidentification with being the body and mind, that we are not. After death, my mind and intelligence carry me to another separate body according to my thinking at the time of death. So, false ego. This false ego is that I am something of material product. This is called false ego. Besides this, there is another conception by which one thinks, this is my body, this is my society, this is my family, this is my nation, and so forth. This 11th function, that of the mind, is called false ego. Everyone is conscious of his activities. Ego. I am doing this. But this ego, this is called false ego. This material, under the material energy, this ego is called another way, upadi, designation. So this is actually the root cause of our problems, when we designate ourselves as something of this material world. The body, the mind, the intelligence, man, woman, black, white, intelligent, dumb, fat, thin, and then we act according to this, because they are like programs, you could say, you know. The mind is working like a computer in some regards. I mean, it can be compared. because there's so many programs, and particularly thought pattern. For example, oh, I'm not worth anything, or I must have a degree, otherwise I cannot earn money, right? These are all kind of thought patterns, like imprints in our thought system, and that the consciousness being filtered through the mind and false ego and everything is identifying with, and then it runs this program, and we behave also accordingly. Like somebody may be reincarnated in a male body, another one in a female body, and then we get socially conditioned, right? A man should not weep, or women has to shut up always, and always serve and neglect her own needs, to serve her kids and her husband and whatever, So there's some particular conditioning that is happening. And this conditioning is again manifesting, influencing the manifestation of our realities. It's a very subtle process, but this is how this world is kind of constituted. Can you understand what I'm saying? Okay. Yeah, it's like wearing colored glasses, like let's say pink glasses, and then all the world appears to be pink. And for the person looking through the glasses without recognizing the glasses are there, it's just thinking, yes, the world is pink. And if another person comes with the blue glasses and is saying, no, the world is blue, don't you see? And then they're having a fight, because they have a different conditioning. Therefore, empathic listening is very important, and learning from each other, being humble, because all of us have this kind of conditionings, different designations, upadis. Sarvopadi viniyam muktam. Pure devotional service is meant to rid us of all these upadis by the culture, by the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. Like when we cultivate a seed in the garden, we have to take care to protect it, to give it the proper soil, proper nourishment, enough water and sunlight and everything. And maybe if some insects come that could eat it, or other animals, you have to fence it, or take some protective means. So we need to do that same thing with our consciousness, actually, which we can learn here in Krishna consciousness. Anyway, and then I found another nice category here within this category. The material creation is meant for rebellious souls who are not prepared to accept subordination under the Supreme Lord. This spirit of false lordship is called false ego. So here we are again in the center of the whole topic, that if I want to be the master, I'm not created to be. That is creating all the problems. If I want to be an enjoyer, the controller. And this is from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Text 529. Mahatattva, or the great causal truth, transforms into false ego, which is manifested in 3 phases: cause, effect, and the doer. All such activities are on the mental plane and are based on material elements, gross senses, and mental speculation. The false ego is represented in 3 different modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Purport: a living entity in his original spiritual existence is fully conscious of his constitutional position as an eternal servitor of the Lord. So this is the liberated state of being that we can attain in the human form of life. All souls who are situated in such pure consciousness are liberated, and therefore they eternally live in bliss and knowledge in the various Vaikuntha planets in the spiritual sky. When the material creation is manifested, it is not meant for them. The eternally liberated souls are called Nitya Mukta, and they have nothing to do with the material creation. So this is our original position. This is who we, as a soul, are constituted naturally. This is what we want, the nature of the soul. And now, the material creation is meant for rebellious souls who are not prepared to accept subordination under the Supreme Lord. The spirit of false lordship is called false ego. It is manifested in the three modes of material nature, and it exists in mental speculation only. Ist das nicht interessant? Those who are in the mode of goodness think that each and every person is God, and thus they laugh at the pure devotees who try to engage in transcendently loving service of the Lord. Those who are puffed up by the mode of passion try to lord it over material nature in various ways. Some of them engage in altruistic activities as if they were agents appointed to do good to others by their mental speculative plans. Such men accept the standard ways of mundane altruism, but their plans are made on the basis of false ego. This false ego extends to the limit of becoming one with the Lord. The last class of egoistic conditioned souls, those in the mode of ignorance, are misguided by identification of the gross body with the self. Thus, all their activities are centered around the body only. All these persons are given the chance to play with false egoistic ideas. But at the same time, the Lord is kind enough to give them a chance to take help from scriptures like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, so that they may understand the science of Krishna and thus make their life successful. The entire material creation, therefore, is meant for the falsely egoistic living entities hovering on the mental plane under different illusions in the modes of material nature. And yesterday I heard a nice class from Srila Prabhupada on YouTube, where Srila Prabhupada was asked by one of his disciples at the end of his class that he was giving, but Srila Prabhupada, how do we know how much we need to do for ourselves and how much we need to do for Krishna? Like, we need to have a balanced lifestyle kind of thing. And so this devotee was wondering, okay, but how can I determine how much, that I still continue to serve Krishna, but I take care of myself properly. And Srila Prabhupada, he said that everything is meant to serve Krishna, so we should not do nothing for ourselves, Of course, this is the stage of pure devotee, completely pure. And we may be in the process of becoming purified by practicing Bhakti Yoga in different stages and whatever, different consciousness states and everything. But I like that very much, that Srila Prabhupada said, none. How much should we do for ourselves? Nothing. It's like, wow, pretty high stage, not to do anything for ourselves. Of course, we need to understand it in a proper perspective, because we need to eat enough, sleep enough, have also work that is according to our duties, and rest sufficiently. This is also Lord Shri Krishna explaining in Bhagavad Gita. Without doing this, he says, we cannot be yogis. So we have to have some discrimination, and not just be fanatic. Only if I clean the pots in a temple am I doing devotional service, and everything else is illusion, is Maya. If I'm sleeping, if I'm eating, if we stop sleeping enough, and if we stop eating enough, then there can be many problems coming from that. The mind, first of all, can become very much dissatisfied, very much disturbed, and then we can come back to the beginning of the class and we can commit offenses again to other devotees. Did you have ever this experience that your body lacked sleep? Maybe you, because you were a mother. And when the body lacks sleep for a longer time, the nerves become very thin, isn't it? And one is edgy. One can be very edgy, or when one is sick. Do you have this experience? One can be very much at the edge of one's self-control, mind control, sense control, because it's just like, I know when I was a teenager, or in the beginning of my 20s, so that there was one incident after I came from the discotheque in the weekend, and we had spent all the money and the shops were still closed and there was no food and no cigarettes, and at that time I was still smoking cigarettes and doing other nonsense things, and I became just so angry, with this other person, And this is also mentioned in this chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 14 in the 5th canto, a few verses before, that sometimes the conditioned soul becomes very upset, even with his beloved family members, which he normally considers to be his own, right? Extended sense gratification. because of hunger, thirst, or whatever, you know. So it's very interesting how this false ego is operating and being against subordination to God, you know. No, I want to be independent. Yes, you can be independent, but you need to understand how to become really independent, and not just think yourself independent. Questions, comments, additions, add-ons? There was again a lengthy class. You? No?
Thank you very much.
What did you like most? Which point are you reflecting on now? How to improve your life?
I must say.
Still to be digested. Nice.
I understand it maybe half flexion, 50%. Not.
Yeah. And for yourself, ne? How much is the basis? Yeah. So this is also very good, ne? So that we can recognize in all humility and honesty how much do I still, you know, be attached to sense gratification. How much am I willing to sacrifice myself? Ne? But without really doing that, then if we try to do too much, we will fall down. If we do too little, we will also fall down. So spiritual life is like a sword, you know, like a razor's edge. Like when you want to shave your beard or something, or hair, you need a very sharp razor, right? Razor blade. And if you can cut very nicely, it will clean very deeply. But if you are one moment inattentive, you can, you know, cut yourself very badly and draw blood. So this is the same with spiritual life, actually, you know. We're always on the edge, you know, not too much, not too little, you know, always need to be attentive and see, okay, how much is really for me, how much can I do for Krishna, and we need to find the balance somehow. But we understand Srila Prabhupada said nothing should be for oneself. And fortunately, yesterday, Ekayani Mataji, she gave a nice answer to my question, how to do that, if we eat and sleep and everything. First of all, we can pray to Krishna, I'm doing this now for you. You know, I like that very much. And then we do it to the best of our abilities.
In a forceful way, or like, can I do this for you? Like, I do this for you, or can I do this for you?
Well, I don't know exactly. I mean, the intention is quite important, the motive that we have. But of course, the attitude, can I do it for you, instead of, okay, I intend to do it for you. That the attitude is also very important, you know, that we understand we are not the only doer. Krishna, Lord Shri Krishna is explaining this also in the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita. There's different factors of the actor, so to say, the one who's acting. Both is important. Yeah.
I have realization. Now we are in the most beautiful place where we can see the deities, and we can listen the holy names, and we can eat prasadam, and we can our senses we can be in the Krishna consciousness.
And what's the question? So now we are in a fortunate situation.
We can control our senses.
Yeah, that's a better position to control one's mind and senses, of course. It's more easy. If one lives outside in a material society where everything is about materialism and it's about forgetting God, it's more hard to control one's mind and senses, because just look at the advertisement business, you know. People are being manipulated, you know. Psychology is being misused in order to make people to buy things they actually don't need, or then what they don't want, you know. But no, you need to buy this to be attractive for the opposite gender, or to be someone, right? So they're basically working with the false ego. And in the temple, we are fortunate souls. In that sense, it is more easy situation, like in a car race, they have the pole position, so to say, you know. Everyone wants to be in a pole position because you can get away from there the most easy. Everything is free, you know. You can just hit the gas pedal and then, you know, off you go. That's true, be in a fortunate position. But still, it's very important to be attentive. If we are neglectful and we take things for granted, Srila Prabhupada very often mentioned that familiarity breeds contempt. Like sometimes we have some problems and we see other people, like you gave the example, you know, of your experience with Bhakti Bhushan Swami, that you saw him, oh, he's just an ordinary person. So this attitude can also come in association with the saints, that, oh, in the beginning we are like, wow, such a holy person, and after some time we start to see the faults and mistakes, and we are thinking maybe he's not so saintly, and then we start to behave differently to the person, right? So this is meant by familiarity breeds contempt, but we can be also neglectful to the process of devotional service, not only to the devotees. And that is very bad, because this is the root cause of all offenses, is to chant inattentively. So we need to know that we need to cultivate our awareness. That is our currency here in Krishna consciousness. First become conscious and then Krishna conscious. And it's really cultivation, like a seed, you know. So many details. But in the association of devotees, they can teach us how to do that. They can give the example. They can show by their own life how blissful that is actually. How nice. So thank you very, very much. I want to stop here. Gandhar Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.